Welcome back to the WSBC podcast. Instead of our normal podcast where we dive deeper into the scripture from Sunday, we'll actually be taking this time to look at our church regathering on June 7th, if the Lord wills. I'm very excited. I'm glad to play music with the band from church that we will be having some members of up on stage. And overall, it should be really great to regather with our church. So I'm just going to throw it to Pastor Randy. Is there anything you just want to start off saying about our church regathering?
Just basically that we're excited and look forward to seeing everyone. We've missed seeing everyone. This is the longest in my life since I've been saved that I've not attended a worship service where people are gathered together. I mean, I was saved when I was 15, and probably it's rare that I've missed 2 weeks in a row since then. Maybe vacation or something like that, or sick. But now it's been 2.5 months, and that's been challenging. It's been a grievous thing as well that, man, we've had to close worship services for the good of everyone. But we're excited to be coming back and encourage our church to be praying for Sunday.
Yeah. So let's give like a more of a behind the scenes look at what we've been doing to prepare for our regathering. And I think one of the important things people probably have questions about is where we've been getting our information, and just to know, is it safe for us to regather? Is it safe for us to come back together at this time?
Well, behind the scenes goes all the way back to when we suspended our worship services in person and went totally online. So there's been a rolling process through that. So the first, you're trying to decide, should we suspend these services? What's the best thing to do? And ultimately we made that decision. And then it became a scramble to, how do we get this online? What equipment do we need? You trying to teach me how to do some of these things from my house. And thank God for Daniel and his knowledge and ability to help keep us current and updated in our media platforms, all those media platforms. And so thank God for that. I'll say more about that toward the end of this.
Yeah.
And then it shifted to, okay, how do we minister effectively to people through that platform the best that we possibly can? How do we seek to stay in touch with some of our, especially our senior citizens, and trying to minister to them that pretty much are isolating, whereas others might be still out and about, trying to reach out to others as well, but focusing on that group. And then it shifted to, okay, what about regathering? When is that possible? What possible scenario does that look like? What are the guidelines? And to be honest, there's like an avalanche of information that's available. And at the beginning, it was of one voice. So you could pretty much watch the news or look at what's online or interact with whatever source you wanted. And they're pretty much saying all the same thing. But then it became political, and it became less about this virus and more about the presidential election.
Yeah.
And so
hard to get accurate information.
Absolutely. It became you don't know who to believe.
Yeah.
One news source was becoming a propaganda voice for one candidate, and another news source is becoming a propaganda source for another candidate. And you could watch their whole stories shifted of what they reported and what they didn't report. And so that one voice at the beginning disintegrated into politics.
Yeah.
And so where have we gotten our information? I've watched so many webinars from church sources that I think I've done my quota maybe for the rest of my life, and read so many articles about it. And there's so many things to think about. One pastor, I referenced this in one of the previous videos. He compared this to changing a tire on a moving automobile. And it really is like that. And it changes so quickly. So from the state Baptist conventions, particularly in the southeastern United States where we are, been following them, reading what they put out, watching their videos, their webinars, been getting it from Christianity Today, from the Church Tax and Law Association, from North American Mission Board, just a number of sources like that have really done a good job of helping churches to navigate the process. And so through some of those, it's pastors coming together, and they're talking about what their thoughts are, what their churches are thinking, and those have been geared. Some state conventions have geared them like to small churches, to medium-sized churches, to large churches, so we could kind of hone in to our size church and see what some of the issues are and what some of the thoughts are. And so those were not political. Obviously, they have a heart for the church and want to help the church do what's best and what's right. So,
yeah.
But some of that stuff, it's stuff you never had to think about. Like
Definitely.
I think I've spent more time on how people can safely go to the bathroom at a church service than I've ever even thought about in my life.
Yeah.
It's like, you got to be kidding me. But it's a real thing. You think about, those are choke points where people do tend to come into closer contact, passing in the hallways, entering, exiting, and all of those things, unfortunately, are things that as a leader you have to think about when you think about regathering people in a group setting. And so that's a big deal too, because when you gather a group together, it doesn't matter if it's a church or wherever it is, when you gather a group of people and put them in close proximity to each other for an extended period of time, that's when things can become problematic. That's a little different than going to Walmart or being at the beach or something like that. And at church, you add the element of singing, which is a whole nother thought process where people are projecting what's in their lungs out if they're singing forcefully. And you never thought about it before, but the people around you, you're sharing with them whatever is inside of your lungs. and actually that has become an issue. There was a choir right at the beginning of this in the Seattle area that 60 people gathered together.
Yeah.
And nobody was symptomatic. They stayed spread apart. And 45 of them contracted COVID-19.
Wow. Yeah.
And that was really before anybody knew anything about what was going on. It was just ramping up in March. And so it was actually a 120 person choir, but only 60 decided to attend, and 45 of them contracted it, and 2 of them died. And so singing is an issue that has to be thought through. And so I've been the filter for that. Obviously, our elders are working full time, and so I've been the filter and try to gather that information, put it in a format that I can give to them to help us make wise decisions about what we should do and what's going on. And so that's some of the behind the scenes. Now you ask, is it safe for us to regather? And we're trying to make it as safe as possible. In our county, the cases are really low. We are aware it only takes one. And if you just look north of us, about 100 miles to Albany, Georgia, you'll see the impact of like a funeral where they think one person attended and that community has been hit really hard. So obviously we can't guarantee anything. We're trying to roll this out as safely as possible. So as shepherds, we are trying to guard the flock as best we can and show love to people and keep people safe. But obviously we can't guarantee anything. We're doing what we can on our end of things, but there are no guarantees. So everybody needs to evaluate that risk for themselves. And people have different comfort levels about that. And I'll say more about that in just a moment.
So one of the obvious biggest differences about us meeting on Sunday than how we used to meet is we're meeting outdoors. That's going to look a lot different. But I'm sure a lot of people are wondering, why can't we just meet indoors? Why do we have to meet outdoors? It might be hot. It might get rained out. And I know there's going to be a lot of cons to meeting outdoors. But what will our outdoor service look like? And why are we meeting in this way?
Well, first of all, it's a bring your own chair service. We're outdoors. You bring your lawn chair, and we won't be providing chairs. The picnic tables under our pavilion have been removed and stored away for right now to allow people to be able to set up and spread out under the pavilion and then out into the field surrounding the pavilion. And so as you think about it, you need to prepare for an outdoor service.
Yeah.
Think about bug spray. Think about things like the sun. It will be hotter. We're moving our service from 10:30 to 9 o'clock to try to beat the heat some. And so all those things are real. It'll also be a family worship service in that we're not providing childcare or children's church or anything like that. We're doing a worship service. Now, why are we doing it outdoors? Obviously, there are things about outdoors. Some I've just described, and others, the weather that you mentioned. So if it rains, we can't do an outdoor worship service. And we don't have any control over that. So we're saying, God, this is our plan. And if you will it to happen, this is what you'll allow to happen. And if you rain it out, then that's on you. We'll go inside with the band and we'll live stream a service from inside.
Yeah.
And if we had 15 people present, which we have no idea how many people are coming, if we had 15 people present, everybody could come in there, spread out in the chairs apart from each other, and we'd be fine. If we had 100 people present, then we can't do that. We're not set up in the sanctuary for that to happen and separate people. But why outdoors? Well, number one, our church leadership team, we believe it's the right thing for us to do at this time. We've looked at all the information. We have considered our specific situation. And we prayed. We've asked God to help us understand what we should do. It's been very challenging. And so that's where we believe we should start and roll out. Yeah. Another thing is it takes a lot of things off the table. There's going to be enough involved with regathering that if we can take things off the table that we don't have to be concerned about, then we want to do that. And an outdoor service compared to an indoor service, you can't believe how many things it takes off the table right out of the gate. Now, most churches are having to engage. They're regathering indoors because they don't have a pavilion. They don't have an opportunity to do it outdoors unless they just went out in the field. But we are blessed. We have a pavilion right out back, and we're set up. We can do it fairly easily. But some of the things it takes off the table are, it doesn't matter how many people show up if we're outdoors, because you can spread out through there and we don't have to be concerned. The churches that are regathering indoors have to be very concerned about that. Yeah. In fact, many of them are requiring that you reserve a spot for the service, that you schedule coming to church online, and that way they can offer the right multitude of services, like service 1, service 2, service 3, if necessary, to accommodate the distancing guidelines and follow those recommendations. But we don't have to think about that in this reopening. We can just focus on our worship service.
And there's a lot of things that it takes off the table, but doing this, this regathering, of course, we're going to be trying to live stream for anyone who is staying at home, trying to be safe so that they can still watch this. Introducing that aspect to our worship service will put a lot more complications and possible confusions and technical issues into practice, or, on the table. So regardless of where we end up worshiping, there's going to be new stuff that might go wrong. And if we're meeting outside and we have those other things off the table, it simplifies all the things that could go wrong, and we could really try and figure those things out quicker.
Right, but it does put things on the table, but the things it takes off the table are safety considerations. The things it puts on the table are technical considerations, and we'll trade those any day of the week.
Sure.
But let me continue, though. Another reason that we've chosen this format to roll out is in talking to people from our church. Some of them, I've said, hey, when will you be comfortable returning to church? And they're like, it's going to be a long time before I'm going to go indoors with a group of people. Yeah. And I knew what we were praying and thinking about. I said, well, what if we did it outdoors? And every one of them said, I think I might come if it's outdoors. Yeah. But if it's indoors, I'm probably not coming. So, okay. That kind of helps us answer the question. But then, as I've already stated, there's no guarantee but the risk is undeniably less outdoors than it is indoors. So with those things in mind, even though it would create more complications for us in some areas, we're going to roll it out outdoors. But also think about it. We're in Florida. We have the privilege to do this. We have the pavilion in which we can do this.
Yeah.
And what are most of our people going to do when they're done on Sunday?
Go out to the
They're
boat.
going to go to the river. They're going to get on their boat. They're going to go in the Gulf. They're going to go swimming. They're going to go fishing. So they're going to be outdoors anyway. So this is not like we're taking people who have no experience outdoors and are thrusting them outdoors and they'll melt. No, everybody or most everybody should be able to handle it. And it's what we think is the right way to do to roll it out. We won't stay outdoors forever. When will we go indoors? I don't know. We'll see how things go outdoors, and we'll see what develops and what transpires.
Yeah.
But it really does. It does simplify the initial reopening by us being outdoors.
So, the way you've worded it is the new term that's no longer new. We have to talk about social distancing and how that'll be practiced at our regathering. We definitely expect everyone to be practicing social distancing. Now, you can be with your family, but what's that going to look like at our service?
Well, we're not going to have a cane pole to whack people. We're not going to have a measuring tape to measure distances. We're just saying, look, hey, these are the recommendations that obviously you can stay with your immediate family, sit near your immediate family. But the recommendations are when you gather a group together, you keep people 6 feet apart. That's the recommendation right now. And so we want to respect that and follow that. And I want you to think of it like this, Daniel, because there are different comfort levels that people have with this. And this is a very practical way and an opportunity to show love and respect to other people. It's not hard. It's not like you have to jump on a pogo stick for 90 minutes in a row without falling off. It's just, hey, just give people their space, because people have different comfort levels, and we want people to come back. And we're aware that if we show up on Sunday and people come who are uncomfortable, and we've told them, hey, we're going to follow these guidelines, we're going to show love, and we don't do it, and they see that,
right,
they're not coming back the next Sunday.
Yeah.
And so it's an opportunity to put into practice Philippians 2, verses 3 and 4. Let nothing be done through selfish ambition or conceit, but in lowliness of mind, let each esteem others better than himself.
Yeah.
Let each of you look out not only for his own interest, but also for the interest of others. And so we're asking people, look, avoid handshakes, avoid hugs, and just give people their space. We want you to talk to people, but just give them their space. You don't know what their comfort level will be. And there's some people that they think this is all bogus. This is all a bunch of nonsense. And it's all a conspiracy. And there are other people that believe it's going to be the end of the human race. And actually, neither of those views are actual factual views. It's somewhere in the middle. There's definitely a political component to this, and people are using it for their own means, but it's not going to wipe out the human race. But we do want to be cautious. We want to be careful. And we want people to be comfortable. We want to say we love you enough that we're willing to do this for your benefit. We definitely don't want to drive someone away from church because they came and they saw that this is a mob scene like they seen on TV and some other places at the beach or wherever. No, we're the church. We love the Lord. We love people. And this is a practical way to show that. Even if you think that it's ridiculous to stay 6 feet away from people, you don't know what that other person thinks.
Yeah.
And you need to show love to them and respect. So sit with your immediate family, gather with them, give other people space and show respect to them in that way. And we'll regather and hopefully people will return the next week.
So we sent out a pretty detailed email, and we also posted it to Facebook. Just pretty much most everything you could need to know about our regathering. When we finished reading it, my wife Libby was like, well, that was pretty thorough. I can't think of any possible questions after that. But it's probably important that we emphasize a few of those details, which could be confusing just because the obvious differences, but especially parking and using the restrooms. You talked earlier about thinking about how to safely let people use the restroom at our service more than you ever have. So what's parking? What's the restroom? What are these little things going to look like that are just going to be so different?
Well, again, you can find that on our Facebook page, and it was sent out to the people who regularly attend our church who are signed up for our church communication system. But you can see it on Facebook, whether you are or aren't. And so I'm not going to go through it all, but just parking, we want to reserve, we'll have a parking team in there, and the spots right next to the pavilion, that row of parking, we're going to reserve those for people who may want to stay in their car. So if there's a senior citizen or someone with underlying health issues, they can let parking people know, hey, I need to park and stay in my car. And they'll, as long as space is available, allow them to pull up and park right there so they could sit in the car and participate in the service from their car if they chose to. That's another reason that we're choosing to roll out with outdoor service, so that people who might not should come to an indoor service could come to this if they chose to. And so the other three sides of the building away from the pavilion, those will be parking for the rest of us. Restrooms, the doors will be propped open. We have two single-use restrooms, one on the church office side, which is the south side of the building, and one in the preschool area, which is the north side of the building. And doors will be propped open, exterior doors, I mean, not the restroom doors.
Yeah.
And the ladies will be on that north side preschool area, the men on the church office side. And if the door's open, you know it's unoccupied. If it's closed, you'll know that somebody's in there.
Yeah.
And if you can't wait and it's occupied, then the restrooms up in the foyer will be available, as well as kind of an overflow if those are not available at that time. Playground will be closed. Offering box will be used. We're not going to pass a plate, hand out bulletins. It'll be as touch-free as we possibly can make it, again, to make people comfortable with what we're doing. Still will be online to the best of our ability. If you are in one of those vulnerable groups, online option is probably best for you right now, although you can come and potentially sit in your car if you choose to do so. And so those are just a few of the things.
So next we should just talk about what the service itself will look like. I'll obviously be talking about the music and let you take the other aspects of it. But
well, Daniel, let me change roles here. Tell us about the music, Daniel.
Yeah. So essentially, we're going to be doing a few songs. We've been doing 2 on the online worship services, but we'll be doing about 3, plus just a more simplified invitation. We'll have most of our band members joining us, but we will be like rotating, so we're not having a million people on stage, so we can distance ourselves. So we're also following the guidelines up on stage. There won't be any lyric projection like normal. You won't see the words behind us. So we're going to try and make the songs familiar enough that you can sing along. But if you do want those words, we'll probably either put them on the website or send them out on Facebook or Flocknote. That day we'll let you know where you can find those words if you want them. Again, we're going to be up on a trailer. It should be kind of a fun setting, but we'll be up on a trailer as a stage. We'll all be standing far enough apart that it'll be safe. We've got everything we need to set up. Everyone should be able to hear fine. We've got some speakers from Nick John, and he'll be making sure those sound good, and the sound should be fine. and that should also be broadcast through our live stream. The same sound that is going through the speakers will also be broadcast through our live stream. Yeah, but I think the main thing I would just want to say is, we should drop what we expect from our normal service expectations. This is obviously just going to be different. So we need to be able to be flexible and say, okay, this is what the service is going to look like right now. It's not what I'm used to expecting, but if we come with an attitude of worship and praise, things should go pretty well. But that's it basically for the music.
The rest of the service will be similar to what it was, except for it'll be streamlined. The main component, we're going to have music and we're going to have preaching. Obviously, there won't be any announcements posted up on the screen and no videos in use, no words, anything like that, because we're just not going to have those available. It's not possible outside. I look forward to preaching, hopefully to people. My wife will probably look forward to that too, because she's been the only audience that I've had on the other side of that cell phone. And but expect there to be glitches. It'll be a learning experience. Our goal is not to be oppressive or to live in fear. We're not going to do that. We're just going to try to do what we can to keep people comfortable on the physical side. Now, we don't want you comfortable. We don't want to. We want God's word to convict you if that is necessary. So we're not trying to provide a service in which no one is challenged, no one is convicted, everybody goes home feeling great.
Sure.
We are trying to provide a service in which people, when they come, the physical safety part of it, they feel like, hey, reasonable guidelines have been put in place to protect me and my family. Yeah. And that's what we want. But there will be glitches. So I would say expect God to show up and prepare yourself to worship him.
And also maybe expect Randy to not be so mobile in his preaching so he can stay in the view of the camera.
Yeah, I've already thought about that, and that's a challenge for me. I've been confined to a chair.
Yeah.
And I'm ready to get loose, but I thought that camera is going to be a problem.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the last things we wanted to talk about was just God's hand in all this, specifically his providence, just all that's happened and all that's going to continue to happen. We always, and this is something I don't remember how long ago it was, but you were just talking about seeing God's hand in your life in one of your previous sermons. And there's a lot that's been at play that we could obviously point to God's hand in how our church has been just continuing, but I'll just throw that to you.
Well, God's providence, his sovereignty, his superintending over the affairs of the world, sometimes that's hidden from us.
Yeah.
But then sometimes it shows up. We went through the book of Ruth not too long ago, and we saw it very vividly. We talked about the people living it weren't seeing it all at that moment, but when you look back, you see it. And so obviously none of what's happened has taken God by surprise. God was certainly aware from eternity past what was going to unfold here. There are no secrets. Nothing is hidden from God. He knows the end from the beginning. Certainly it took us by surprise, but not God. But one of the neat stories here is how God moved. And just for time's sake, I'm going to try to make this more concise than I would like to otherwise. And that's with bringing Daniel to our church. 2 years ago, just about right now, Daniel's first Sunday as our part-time music leader. I think it was the first Sunday of June or maybe the last of May.
Yeah.
And so you came on board. Before that, we had been searching for a part-time music leader. Our church elders had been praying, seeking God's face, and God just didn't bring anybody. I mean, nobody to the forefront. Nothing. It was like God just closed the door, turned off the faucet. And so, what do you do in that case? You keep praying, you keep waiting, you keep praying, you keep waiting. And so that's what we did. And it was in the plan of God and in the hand of God. And God brought us to you. And within a month of finding out that you were out there, we had called you to be our part-time music leader. And so then last year at this time, we began a discussion of potentially bringing you on board full-time at our church. But what would that look like? What would be your responsibilities? And so one of the things we talked about was media. So we need someone to take over our social media and our media platforms and bring those, make them current, make them more interactive. And as elders, we prayed and discussed that. And at one point we thought, in our county, that may not be as important. But then we switched back to say, no, that is important. And so we're going to make that a component. We're going to recommend that to the church. And in December, the church voted to call you full-time music primary, media would be a part of that as well. And so in January, Daniel started. And little did we know that 2.5 months from that media component would become absolutely essential. We had no idea. We had no knowledge of that, but God knew. And so I think looking back now, you can see the hand of God in all of that, of how God led you to our church and then led our church leaders and then our church to bring you on board with a component of your ministry being the media aspect of that. And then suddenly, 2.5 months later, we're totally online because we're forced to be. And without you, that would have been a much steeper hill to climb. And so I just want to thank God for his work. I see his hand. I see his providence in all of that. And just want to say to you personally, Daniel, you've done a great job through all of this in keeping our church and our ability to minister to people possible through the media platforms. You've just done an awesome job. And I thank you for it. And I thank God for you.
Well, I know it's all God's hand. And I'm just glad that, our church was pretty receptive to all the stuff that we did online. Of course, it was always going to be more engaging right at the beginning, but it seemed like our church enjoyed things being online as much as they could. A lot of people, it's never going to be a good replacement for meeting in person.
No, of course not.
It's been an interesting time, and I'm just glad the church has been very receptive of all these things. But
and I thank God for our church as well. Number one, listening to God in calling you, first of all, to be our music person, and then to bring you on full time with these responsibilities. But also just through this, the church has been great. Some of the horror stories that I've heard, not many, but some from other places, just grateful to God for the people of Wakulla Springs Baptist Church and your willingness to be flexible and to try to stay engaged through this very unusual time in the life of our church and in our country as well.
Well, I think that'll pretty much wrap up this podcast. I know it was a little different. I will probably just go back into the normal podcast next week. But thank you guys for listening. We really are excited to come back and regather with you guys. So I hope we get to see you. And if you feel led to stay home and be cautious and safe, that's totally fine. Don't feel like we're pressuring you to come. But we're very excited for how things are progressing. But thanks for listening to this week's episode, and we'll see you next week.